Okay, today I'm going to be doing my next part in a series of PHP tutorials, and today is going to be covering if-else statements, do-while, better known as repeat region, and I'm going to cover session variables a little bit better. Alright, last two videos created a membership script. That's the same part we will be working off of today. All the files that we created, I'll still be using those. Okay, last time at the end of the video I was showing you how to protect a page from somebody that is not logged in. I ran out of time and didn't get to explain it all the way, so I'm going to go ahead and explain that right now. Alright, so what I did is use the if statement. And what an if statement means is if a condition is met, then do this. If it's not, then go ahead and do this. So, a lot of things in PHP you have to be able to think backwards. So here I went if, and is set means exactly what it says, is if it is set. The exclamation point means is not. So if the session username is not set, and that all has to be in parentheses, then redirect back to the home page, the login page in our case. So that's all that means is if a condition is set, then do this. If it's not, then do that. So that's all there is to it. That would be the main use for an if statement in a membership script, is keeping your pages protected. So what we'll go ahead and do is, I haven't changed any files since last time, so we'll go ahead and try to go to the members PHP without logging in. And what it does is redirects back to the index PHP. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and log in to make sure that that is working correctly. And we'll log in, and there it is. You are logged in, and the members PHP. And that's how you would go about protecting a page from members that aren't logged in or aren't registered. Alright, so the next part we're going to cover do-while statements, or better known as repeating regions. Dreamweaver has this great function that will actually do it for you. I'm going to show you how to do it by hand today. So what you would use a do-while statement for is if you have multiple rows that you want to echo out, in other words, print out under the browser. Yeah, if you just have multiple rows you want to print out on the browser. Today I'm going to be using blog posts as an example. So what we're going to go ahead and do is create a new table in our tutorials database. So what we will do is create that table. Well, maybe. And we're going to go ahead and call this table blog. And we'll give it 4 fields. And we'll go ahead and create that table. Alright, so the first field, as I said when we created the first table, is I always use an ID. It's an integer to auto increment that just gives a number value to each row in that table. You don't have to do that. I do that for every table just because it can be useful. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is blog posts. So the first one will go title. And we'll give that a varchar of 64. Then the next one is going to be the actual content of the blog post. So we'll just call that content. And this will be text with no value because you want it to be as big as you need it to be. Then last but not least, we'll do an author. And that'll be, we'll just call that varchar 64. And we'll go ahead and save it. Okay, so you can see all of our columns are there. What I'm going to go ahead and do is insert text into it directly through PHPMyAdmin. You wouldn't normally do this. I'm just doing this for time's sake today. Normally you'd have an admin or something that you would do that with. So what we'll do is go ahead and call this post. That's already there, number 1. And I'm going to use lorem ipsum text, which is just generic placeholder text. If you want to see where you can find that, just go Google lorem ipsum. So I'll copy and paste that in there, and the author of me. And this one, I'll call it differently so you can see the difference. We'll call this post number 2. And it's already in there for me. And we'll go some content here. And we'll just leave that one simple. And we'll go the author of just my first name. And I don't put the ID in there because I set that to auto increment. And so we'll go ahead and put that in there. If you have any questions on any of this, just feel free to let me know. Alright, so we'll click on the blog table, make sure it's there, and there it is, post number 1 with the lorem ipsum text, and post number 2 with just some content here. and you can see how they're different, so I can show you the difference. Normally you would put this content in through an admin of some sort on the back end of your website. Like I said, I'm just putting that in there just to save time today. So the first thing we're going to want to do is include our config file. If you remember the last two videos, that is important when you're working with the database, so it can connect and select the database table you'll be working with, the actual database you'll be working with. So we'll include the config file, then we'll go query will equal MySQL query, and we're going to be using the select method. So we'll select all columns, which is the asterisk, from blog, and we'll just leave it at that for now. Now remember, as I explained last time, that returns it in an array. We want a workable value to work with, RY, and that will equal MySQL fetch assoc. Well, if I can spell today. Oh, geez. Of the query. Alright, so that gives us something better to work with. Alright, then the next thing we're going to want to do is create our do while statement. So we'll go do, curly bracket, and always don't forget to close it, and we'll do the while part later. Now what I like to do, as I showed you last time, is define my strings that are returned as different values. So what I'm going to do is define title equals the return data, which will be a string, of the column name, which in this case will be title. If you're wondering where I'm getting that from, that title is the actual name of the column. So that's what I want for those. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the other two in here. And so you can see how all those are in there. So post equals the string of the content column and of the author column. And I want to get all of those. So then what I want to do is actually echo or print out the actual text that's in the database. So what we'll do then is echo the title. And the period in PHP means and. So what I'm going to do is echo out a BR for formatting. And then I want the content, so the post. And we'll echo out another BR. And last but not least, the author. Then what I'm going to do at the end is put 2 in there, so it will separate the rows. Oops, not NR, BR. And don't forget your semicolon. So what this is doing is, it'll start the do statement, and it'll run through it once. Now if there's another column from this query, it will run through again, and so on for each and every column. So as part of this query, it will repeat for each of those returned. So the next part we're going to want to do is the while statement. So we'll go while, parentheses, and what you can do for that is just copy and paste your MySQL fetch association, the whole line, right inside the parentheses, just like that, and that arrow will go away, just like so. So what this is doing is it'll repeat it for each one of those entries, and I'm going to echo those out right here. Now you don't have to assign variables to your strings that are returned. I do, because it makes for a cleaner code, and I don't like writing out strings every time I have to use that variable. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and see if that works. So we'll go ahead and save that. And remember, I have 2 BRs on the end, so it'll separate between the columns. So we'll go ahead and pull up our members and refresh. And there they are. So you can see how it has the title for the first one, the content, and the author of the first one. And the same goes for the second one. And see how there's 2 line breaks right here? That's where I put in those 2 line breaks afterwards. These 2 line breaks, so that separates the actual rows. So if you want to double check to make sure that worked right, so post number 1, post number 2 with the content. So post number 1 had the lorem ipsum content with my first and last name, and post number 2 just had some content here with just my first name. And that went in just like that, and it repeated it for each row. Now, what if you just wanted to start adding content and keep adding posts? So what you would do, you wouldn't have to change anything to code. You just have to insert it into here. And like I said, normally you do this through an admin in your site of some sort. So we'll call this one post number 3. And we'll go, this is the 3rd post in the tutorial. And we'll call the author tutorial, just for namesake. So we'll go ahead and put that into the database. And you can see how it's right there in the table. So without changing the code, I'll go ahead and hit refresh. And there's the 3rd one. And this is what makes do while statements very useful, is you only have to write them once, and for each row or each post, it'll repeat it for you. Now you can limit your queries to other things and things like that. I don't have enough time today, so I'm not going to go all the way into that. I always seem to run out of time. But you can see how do while statements are very useful. You only have to write that once, and I can keep adding columns into here. And like I said, normally you do this through admin of some sort. So we'll just go post number 4, and we'll call this tutorial content for the 4th post, and we'll just call this 4th post as the author, and we'll hit go. And now you can see how it returned back the 4th post. So that's what makes those very useful for do while, better known as repeat regions. But when you declare variables, if you decide to, now you don't have to, but if you decide to, make sure you do that with inside the do while statement, and it will echo out in the echo in there, and it'll go through each row that is in there. If you have any questions on that, feel free to let me know. Any questions on if statements? As far as session variables, I'll try to cover those. Session variables are very easy. Always remember to put session start at the top of the page that you will be using session variables with, and I think that'll cover it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Leave a comment on my blog, ryancon.com, and thanks.